Uh, um, yeah, just, that's fine. Should I shut this maybe until we start? Well, you can. There we go. Am I on now? Okay. Is it too loud? Okay. All right. Well, I want to thank you for having me. We'll get started. It's about 5 after. Well, it's about 7 after. Have almost a full crowd. My name is Sam Savides. I work for LiftMaster, a division of the Chamberlain Group. I live 20 minutes away off Irving Park Road, and this is great because I only cover 20 states. Only did 88 of these presentations last year, so I'm home actually this entire month. I start traveling next month, although I was in Indianapolis last week. So today we are going to talk about commercial door operators, a UL 325 safety standard review. I'd like to make this interactive, not me as a monologue standing up here just kind of spewing things out. Questions, any comments, ideas, feel free to ask as we're going through. This course is good for 1 HSW, and most of you have come up and signed in already, but I'm going to pass around. There's 2 sign-in sheets. I know you signed in already, right? Did you sign in? No? Okay, so if you can pass that behind you then. And I don't know if you signed in already or not, but you can pass it around. And I want to be respectful of your time. We're getting started a few minutes late, but I'm going to try to get you out of here by 1 o'clock, depending on how many questions you have today. And as I said, let's keep this interactive. Ask questions as you go. I do like to move around. If that gets distracting, let me know. There is a blue X up here. I'll try to stand on that if it is distracting. So there are 5 learning objectives. They really can get boiled down to 2. First is describe the types of commercial door operators that are available in the marketplace, and what are the or commercial doors that are available in the marketplace, and what are the operators that move those doors. And then the bottom 3, explain and discuss the requirements of UL 325 and how it contributes to the safe operation of commercial doors and door operators. List the devices that meet the UL standard, and then lastly, how it all ties into NEMA ratings. How many of you in the room are familiar with NEMA ratings? Just real quick, show of hands. Anybody? You use them in your specs? Not really? Okay, well, we're going to touch on that as we go through things. So to start with, a commercial property owner is really looking to address these 4 key bullet points that are on the wall behind me. And if one of them is missing, they're going to certainly feel the pain. If more than one is missing, there might be a potential for some challenges on the project. So first of all, smooth functioning, pretty basic. Want to make sure the door opens when it's supposed to open, close when it's supposed to close. Frequency of use. We're going to touch on this throughout the presentation today, and I'm going to ask for some feedback from you because I'm trying to gather some information that's actually from out in the market. How often are the doors opening and closing? How often are the operators moving those doors? I was at a project similar to this in Milwaukee last spring, outside of Milwaukee, and they had 10 doors side by side. And when they built the building 10 years ago, the warehouse 10 years ago, they thought they were all going to be utilized about the same amount of time. What they found was from the outside, the 7 to the left were used very infrequently, and the 3 to the right, the customers would pull up to it, pull inside, load or unload, and then exit at the other end of the building. And those 3 doors accounted for about 85% of the use of the 10. And then the other 7 were only accounted for 15%. And we're going to touch on how that applies to maintenance and some other things as we go forward. Security of the facility. I know that you work on educational projects from looking at your website. Is it a school in January and there's 1,500 students there and it's occupied Monday through Friday, or is it a Sunday in the middle of the summer and maybe the custodial staff is the only people that are there? And tied in with that is the safety of employees, customers, and or tenants. And I want to add to that family members that might show up. That project that I mentioned in Milwaukee, or outside Milwaukee, when I was there about this time. I wasn't doing a lunch and learn. It was a warehouse. And a couple of families showed up, the spouse and a couple of young children, and they used the overhead doors to walk in because it was around the spring, if I remember right, around April, May, and they walked in through the overhead doors that were open. So I want to make sure that the building is safe for anybody that's entering or exiting it. So to start with, we'll touch on the different types of doors that are available. Standard, lift, sectional door. Each individual panel is attached to the one adjacent to it with hinges. It's the most traditional and most common type of door. traditionally used in a building that has lower ceilings. When the door is opened or operated, it's going to immediately transition into an overhead horizontal position. Any questions on that type of door? I'm sure you're all familiar with that. A high lift sectional door, again, each individual section is attached to the one adjacent to it with hinges. This is typically going to be utilized when you need more clearance up above. Maybe there's some suspended HVAC equipment, or you need to move larger pieces of equipment into the opening. So you're going to have a higher ceiling, as you can see in the pictures here. Ooh, back up. There we go. Vertical lift sectional door. Hello. Provides the maximum amount of space behind the door. We see this a lot when there is HVAC equipment. The door is going to ride vertically along the wall, depending on the manufacturer, 6 to 10 inches. Depending on the height of the door, the ceiling is always going to be twice the height. So if you have a 12 by 16 door, 16 foot tall, you're going to need a 33, 34, 35 foot ceiling in order to allow that door to open. And some of this right now is very basic, so we're going to kind of dive into some of the weeds in a little bit. Next, a rolling steel door, also known as a coiled door, provides the most amount of security because this is a one-panel door, so nobody can take a pry bar to it or a crowbar, try to pry apart those individual sections. It's also great for severe weather. Driving rain, snow, wind, you're not going to have to worry about that flowing through those individual panels. When this is opened or operated, it's going to barrel roll onto the hood up here on top. Next, a rolling grill provides security like the rolling steel door or the coiled door, but it also provides openness. Now, in my opinion, it had its heyday in the 80s and 90s. We still see them in shopping malls, but that's where they were very prevalent. I was at Stratford Mall last year around March, because it was my daughter's birthday, and I hadn't been there in several years, and I was surprised when I was walking through, they got rid of most of these, and they put in some of those glass sliding doors. And actually, I was at Stratford. I don't know if anybody's been out that way. They knocked down a Macy's and put up a Woodman's grocery store, which that kind of blew my mind a little bit as a side note. Next, a fire door designed to seal off parts of a building. Typically, it's going to be rated for 2+ hours, typically manufactured from 18 to 24 gauge galvanized steel. So commercial versus residential door operators. While they're similar in mechanics and available technology, where they differ is in the size and weight of the doors that they move and in the frequency of use. Last year in May, before Memorial Day, right around Memorial Day at my own home, on a weekend, doing yard work, I was in and out of my garage 9-10 times, so the doors opening and closing. And that's pretty high frequency for a single family home. Typically, that might be just once on a weekend, maybe twice, but on a commercial building, on a warehouse, that could happen in an hour. Very, very common. Certainly can happen in a day, and on occasion, maybe that's what's happening during the week. Some commercial door operators can come with software, and the software provides these 3 key benefits that are listed on the wall here. First is maintenance. It can establish a schedule. The schedule can be based on a calendar time frame, or what we see more commonly that the manufacturers recommend is on the number of cycles, maybe 5,000 cycles, 18,000 cycles. Each manufacturer and each operator is going to have their own requirements. Next is security. Some commercial door operators can have security systems that tell you with an alarm or alert when the door is opened or closed. They can even tell you how long it's opened for. And lastly is a timer to close, programmed during installation in 1 or 15-second increments. When the door is in the fully opened overhead position, the timer is activated and it'll count backwards to 0. Once it reaches 0, the door will then begin to close. Now, I was at the Elgin Police Station last spring, visiting a project, not the bad side, okay? And they were installing 4 new operators, and they wanted them programmed for 90 seconds. So they programmed 6 15-second increments, so the door would count backwards to 0 then, trigger that, and then the door would close like what you saw here on the video that we just saw. It can be programmed, depending on the manufacturer, anywhere from several seconds up to a full day, and it depends on the project requirements. Do you use timer to close much on projects at all? No? Okay. So when you're specifying commercial door operators, these are 4 key questions that you want to answer to go down the path of which operator is correct for your project. First is, what's the weight and type of the door? Is it a standard sectional door, standard lift sectional door, or is it a coiled door? Each of those are going to weigh a different amount. Tied in with, what's the door dimension? Is it a 10 by 10 or is it something else? When I was doing this presentation in July outside of Detroit, one of the architects said, hey, I'm working on a fire station, and they have a 3-inch insulated thick door that they want to use on that project. Well, that's going to weigh different than a standard lift sectional door. The electrical supply, is it 110 or is it something else? I was at a project here in Mount Prospect, actually, I think it was last March, if I remember right. And what happened was they had 4 doors. It was a warehouse, existing warehouse, 4 doors side by side, and 3 of them had operators on them. The 4th one was a manually open door where they went up to it for whatever reason and just opened and closed it. And there was a column between the 3rd and 4th door, roughly 15 inches square. So they couldn't mount the operator to that, so they had to figure something different to do. The other 3 all had the wall-mounted operators, which we'll touch on in a little bit. Still a couple sandwiches, I think. Lastly, the cycles per hour or per day. Is it a high level or a low level of activity? Is it 8 or 10 cycles in an hour? Is it 20 cycles in an hour? Is it 20 cycles in a day or in a week? That's all going to tie in the maintenance that we saw a couple slides previous. So now we'll touch on the different types of operators. First one, the most common, everybody's probably familiar with it. If you have a single family home, this is what's the most popular, a trolley operator mounted to the ceiling. You're going to have a channel or a guide coming off the operator. It's going to have a door arm with a bracket that's attached to the door with a bolt and pin right here. When the operator is activated, it's going to vertically lift it from the top of the door back towards the operator. I want to say that again. It's vertically lifted from the top of the door. There is no vertical lift at the bottom. Many times I'll do this presentation, so I just started adding this right here, and I'll have somebody in the audience say, Sam, I'm standing at a project or I'm at my house, and I see it being lifted or raised from the bottom. Well, it's not attached at the bottom. It's attached at the top, so that's where the vertical lift is. There is a manual release, and you can't see it. It's real hard to see, but there's a pull chain right here. So in the event of a power outage, you can go up to it, you pull on that chain, you bend down, you pick it up, and you throw it up over your head, and it'll stay in the open overhead position. You need to make sure you give it enough force so it goes all the way back. However, you don't want to do what I did last summer when I installed my personal garage door opener. My buddy and I were doing it. We picked it up, and we threw it, and we both thought the other one was doing it. We did it together. We thought it was going to go back through the back of the operator, so you got to be careful with how much force you're throwing it back. You guys are so quiet, and ladies. So we're back in school, and there's a pop quiz, and I have a prize. I did this presentation to almost 1,100 architects last year, and I had 1 architect that didn't like the prize. So I'm pretty confident somebody will like it if you answer correct. A jackshaft operator differs from a trolley operator in 2 key ways. Can anybody give me one of them? I already gave it to you, yes. Correct. Not what I was looking for, but correct. And the prize is Rice Krispie treat. Told you. Told you. So jackshaft operator is mounted to the wall. That's the first way that it's different. It's very flexible, so it can be mounted to the left or the right of the door. It is not mounted to the ceiling. Then it has a gear and a cable that attaches to the spring torsion shaft. When the operator is activated, it spins the gear and cable, which then spins the spring torsion shaft. There's a cable that you can't see in the picture, but it goes all the way down on the left and on the right side of the door, and it'll raise or lower the door whichever direction you need it to go. Now, I mentioned it's very flexible, so it can be installed on the left side or the right side. It can be installed below, which is what typically is done, the spring torsion shaft, or above the spring torsion shaft. And because it's so flexible, if you're using it on a steel security door or a coiled door, and you don't have room for it on either side, because sometimes they're used in close quarters, maybe in a school cafeteria or school bookstore, what you can do is actually flip that around and install the face right onto the hood of that operator. So a lot of different ways that this can be utilized. Any questions on a jackshaft operator? Anybody? No? Okay. A hoist operator. Is anybody familiar with the difference between a hoist operator and a jackshaft? They look pretty similar. There's a jackshaft. There's a hoist. Anybody familiar with the difference? So I take it you're probably not using hoist operators then. A hoist operator is a form or a version of a jackshaft operator. The only difference, and I forgot to mention, a jackshaft operator also has the pull chain like the trolley operator. The difference is when you pull on the jackshaft operator and you raise it up, typically these are used on higher ceilings. You don't have a way to keep that in the open overhead position, so it has to be propped up with a ladder or a broom or something to allow the vehicle to get out. A hoist operator has standard a chain and pulley. So in the event of a power outage, somebody can go up to it, pull on that, and the door will stay in the open overhead position. The vehicles can be removed, and then they go back to that, and they lower it again. I'm starting to get calls from around the country, or around my 20 states that I cover, on hoist operators. I did this presentation in Missouri last fall, right after Labor Day, and the Public Works Department is going to start requiring this standard on all of their new construction, and they're actually going to retrofit some of the existing buildings because they don't want to worry about the vehicles getting out in the event of a power outage. Something to consider for projects going forward if you have that opportunity. Yes? Mm-hmm. You pull on this chain? Yes. You pull on the chain, you raise it up. Traditionally, they're either on the high lift or the high lift sectional or the vertical lift. So once it's up, it's not going to stay up. It's going to come back down. So then you need to get an extension ladder to prop it up or hold a broom up there or somehow keep it open so the vehicles can get out. And the hoist operator will stay up. And then because they're going to pull on this, it's going to engage and lock. And then they go back to that, pull on that chain, and then it'll lower it. Any other questions on the difference between a hoist operator and a jackshaft operator? No? Okay. A fire door operator designed to have a quick release, typically tied into a smoke detector or the building's fire alarm system. Once that is tripped or activated, it's going to close until it's going to move until it's fully closed. I had somebody ask me last year, we put these in kitchens sometimes in schools. What happens if it hits that metal cart that they move around? Is it going to reverse and go back? It's not how it's designed. It's designed to keep going until somebody moves that metal cart. It's going to keep bouncing trying to close. The other option is it can be utilized with a fusible link. Do you use fusible links at all? You do use fusible links? Okay. Would you say it's more than 50%, the fusible links? Yeah? Okay. Operators are motors, and motors require a reduction system. The reduction system provides two key benefits. The first one is that it allows the operator to move a larger door than if it did not have it on there. The second benefit is that it prevents it from overworking itself. Now there's two different types of reduction system. The first one is a belt-driven system, similar to what's on your car engine, or on a lawnmower. You've got your engine, you've got some type of pulley. On an operator, it's manufactured from the same type of material as what your car fan belt is manufactured from, so it's very durable. We'll see this utilized when there's a low level of activity. What's a low level of activity? Probably less than 10 cycles in an hour would be considered a low level of activity. Next is a gearhead reduction system. Here's your gearhead. It's going to be bathed in a continuous oil bath. So we're going to see this utilized when you have a high level of activity. High level of activity would be 15 to 20 cycles in an hour, maybe 100 cycles in a day. That would be considered a high level of activity. 95 to 100. Now both of these can come with a clutch. Yes. No. Correct. Correct. Both come with a clutch. Not always standard, depending on the manufacturer. The clutch is going to help with the operation and the braking. So if you think you want a clutch on your project, you need to check with whichever manufacturer you're specifying. We've had a couple of questions, so we're getting better, but we're back in class again. We have another pop quiz with another prize. You're smiling, so hopefully you know the answer before I even ask it. What is a solenoid brake? They're not always standard. Does anybody know of what a solenoid brake is? Has anybody heard of a solenoid brake? Anybody? No? Okay. We'll have to carry that prize forward then. A solenoid brake is a form or a version of an electrical magnet. It's designed to prevent the downward drift of a door. All of the doors, the operators should not drift downward when the door is fully open. Most manufacturers will warranty their operators for 2 years. However, the life cycle can be as long as 10, 12 years or longer. That project up in Milwaukee I mentioned, those 8 doors, or 7 doors, excuse me, to the left, probably are going to last a lot longer, the operators, than the 3 to the right that are being used 85% of the time. So I was at the firm I mentioned outside of Detroit, and it was right around or right after the 4th of July, and one of the architects said, Sam, I was at a project right before Memorial Day, school project. They're in the gymnasium. The school was about 10 years old, and 3 or 4 doors, two of them, excuse me, were open, and one of them had crept down about 2 feet. And they said, does that mean it did not have a solenoid brake? Most likely all 4 of them didn't have a solenoid brake, but that one might have been utilized more than the other 3, so that's why it started creeping down. So solenoid brakes also are not standard from manufacturers. It is something I would ask them if you're on the phone with them talking about something else to just find out. And it could be a liability issue if that door did start to creep down quite a bit, especially in a school situation and somebody got injured. We do see this utilized a lot, excuse me, in the South. We see it a lot in any type of service situation like a car wash. We see it in automobile service centers, quick lube facilities. They'll have solenoid brakes on all their doors. Any questions on this slide at all? No? Okay. So the National Electrical Manufacturers Association, or NEMA, has developed standards and ratings to grade and regulate electrical devices. It's going to regulate and protect any type of component and wiring, and it refers to the ability of a substance to both enter and escape from any type of enclosure. And this really starts diving into the meat of the presentation now. Commercial door operators are typically rated NEMA 1, NEMA 4, and NEMA 4X. They do go up, excuse me, to NEMA 12, but for the purpose of what we're talking about today, it goes up to NEMA 4X. So NEMA 1 ratings refer to the ability of a substance on an indoor application to seal out, where it's not necessary, to seal out normal everyday dirt and dust. A school gymnasium is a great example. Automobile dealer service centers, they're pretty clean now, not compared to how they used to be back in the day where they were pretty messy. NEMA 4, pressurized water, might be a car wash or a marina. That would be a NEMA 4 situation. NEMA 4X, a harsher environment, might be a indoor swimming pool at a hotel perhaps, where you've got those chlorine fumes that are all about, and you don't want them to get into the box. So that would be a NEMA 4X example. NEMA 7 or 9 could be a paint factory. It's not on the board here, but a paint factory, and you don't want those paint fumes to get inside to a box either. Any manufacturer that wants to have their product NEMA rated has to have it tested at an independent testing laboratory. Underwriters Laboratory headquarters not too far from here. Edison Testing Laboratory. Both of those two are recognized by OSHA. CSA, Canadian Standards Association, most manufacturers that sell in the United States also sell in Canada. They then have to have their product rated with the CSA as well. After the product is tested, there has to be some type of label or identifying mark, whether it's embossed or a label applied to the product itself. So UL 325. Has anybody read the standard? Nobody? You're all waiting for the movie to come out this Friday, right? It's going to be a blockbuster. UL 325 only cares about human safety. It doesn't care about vehicles or equipment. It was adopted in the 80s when over 2,000 kids were injured or killed playing in their garages at their homes, and the doors came down on top of them. So it doesn't care about homeowner's car. It doesn't care about a vehicle, commercial vehicle. All it cares about, residential or commercial, is human safety. It applies to those 5 categories. Today we're talking about door operators. If you do much with gate operators, I do a presentation on that as well. Totally different standard. I can come back in 6 months if you want me to and talk about that. So UL 325 states that there must be an external entrapment protection device on the external entrapment protection zone. The zone is going to be wherever that door is closing. Underneath that door, that's the entrapment zone. Commercial door operator must require constant pressure on the button to close. And we're going to dive into these 3 options on the upcoming slides here. So somebody has to stand there and hold their hand on that button. If they don't have that as option 1, they have to have one of the next 2. It should be equipped with a continuously monitored safety device. For our purpose today and for the standard UL 325, continuously monitored means that the operator is talking to the protection device 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That school example I used earlier, it doesn't know that it's a Wednesday in January and there's 1,500 students, or a Sunday in the middle of the summer and nobody's there, or just the custodial staff is there. So 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, it's going to be communicating. One option would be an edge protection device. The other option is electronic photo eyes. There should be an owner's manual. The manual is going to state which photo sensors and sensing edges are approved, and they're going to be tested as a system. So the operator with the protection device are going to be tested together. If a contractor or installer comes to you and says, Ms. Architect, Mr. Architect, we like that operator that you specified from manufacturer A, but we really like those green photo eyes from manufacturer X. Is that okay if I go ahead and use them? If it's called out in the owner's manual, that's fine. But if it's not called out, they weren't tested together, doesn't meet UL 325, so it doesn't meet the approval then. It's going to talk about proper installation, adjustment, and wiring. It's going to talk about where contact sensors should be located at the bottom edge of the door and proper placement of the non-contact sensor as well. Keep going too quick. We already touched on what monitored means right here, communicating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And on the bottom, an auxiliary non-monitored safety device is permissible only in conjunction with one that is monitored. And I believe it's the very last slide of the presentation, or next to the last slide, that we're going to touch on that. So option 1, the operator must require constant pressure to close. So I'm standing here. This is going to be on this wall. I have to be able to see that door directly across from me, put my hand there, hold my hand while I'm watching that close. This can't be installed in one part of the building while the door is in a different part, because then I can't see it, and I can't see if somebody's walking underneath it. When I take my hand off of the close button, it's going to stop and it's going to reverse. Portable or automatic device only to open the door. If this is my remote for that door operator, it's only used to open the door. Same principle. If I'm walking around and I'm on that part of the building, but the door's over here, I can't see if somebody's walking underneath it. Constant pressure must be the only method to close. So this is the only method. I want to repeat that. Very important. And lastly, it should be impossible to modify the wires. Kind of basic and simple, but we all have remotes on our cars at home. We all have remotes on our TVs. So in a commercial setting, You know, people were going up to this and they were tired of standing there for 30 seconds while the door opened. So what were they doing? They're going in the box, modifying the wires, so they just tapped it, and that way the door would close and they could walk away. Well, that doesn't meet UL 325, so they had to call it out. And this was adopted on the commercial side in 2010, so 10 years ago now. Residential side, it was back in the 80s, like I had mentioned. Do you use these much on your projects? And I know every project's different, but would you say 25% or more? Yes? 80%. Okay. Okay. Next option, photoelectric eyes. You're going to have a transmitter on one side, a receiver on the other. You're going to have a beam of light that goes across. It doesn't matter which transmitter or receiver is on which side. When the door is operating, it's going to reverse if the beam is interrupted. If you remember, I mentioned that this was adopted in the 80s on the residential side. There were studies that were done that a child's body, depending on the age and size, is 6 inches high when it's laying on the ground. So the standard is at 6 inches. Testing is done at 6 inches, and that's where photo eyes are supposed to be installed. Now, there's an expensive piece of equipment there, and owners and property managers are concerned about human safety, but that's probably a $500,000 piece of equipment there. They're concerned about that getting injured or damaged, excuse me. So what they've done is that they'll install one photo eye at 6 inches, and they'll put the other photo eye at some higher elevation, hoping that it's going to protect that vehicle as it passes through, and it's going to get detected by that second photo eye because the chassis is higher than 6 inches. That does not meet the standard, and the reason is, if somebody was standing there and the door came down on that side where it's at a higher elevation, they could get injured or killed. So what many manufacturers recommend is that the first set of photo eyes is installed at 6 inches. A second set can be installed at any higher elevation. It does not need to be monitored, okay? Most manufacturers will sell one set that's monitored, which is the lower set, and then they'll have a higher set that's not monitored. Because remember, the standard is only at 6 inches. End of April last year, I did this exact presentation, roughly the same size crowd. And when I was finished, I was picking up my extra materials. Two architects were in the back of the room talking, and one of them eventually came up and said, "Hey, Sam, I want to let you know, 3 years ago, my neighbor down the block, his 3-year-old toddler was killed playing in the garage because they had moved the photo eyes and tied them up above because they kept getting bumped." UL 325 on the residential or commercial side only cares about human safety. That's the purpose of it. Sometimes they get bumped and they get out of alignment. Yes, that can happen. Sometimes, depending on the light angle, maybe it's hitting the sunlight. It could be hitting that transmitter or the receiver, and it might trigger it. So it just needs to be adjusted or tweaked a little bit. But human safety or life safety, that's all that this cares about. Any questions on photo eyes? No? Okay. Third option, pressure-sensitive door edge. You're going to have an installation track that's mounted to the bottom of the door. Then this is either going to be snapped or slid in. You can see the groove, depending on the manufacturer. You're going to have 2 or 4 wires. So when, excuse me, when that comes in contact with something, it's going to automatically reverse. Just like when you get on an elevator and you put your arm there and the door is closing, you put your arm to catch it, it's going to automatically reverse. Same principle. Now it's important that you specify the correct length, and here's why. Let's say you've got a 20-foot door, and in your specification you say install manufacturer's door edge. Pretty simple and basic, straightforward. However, the installer has a 30-foot piece left over in his warehouse or his garage, and he takes it out to the project because it's the same manufacturer that you specified, and he cuts it, and then he installs it, and somehow it doesn't get tested during the walkthrough, the final inspection. 4 years down the road, the first event, maybe that's coming down and somebody's standing underneath and they get hurt or worse. So what I would suggest that you do is add one word if you're using door edges, the word unmodified. install unmodified door edge. Most manufacturers will have a door edge that meets the standard size door, whatever that size is, and then that way it protects you from any potential liability. Any questions on these three options that we just touched on? How are we on time? Okay. Any questions? No? You're all still so quiet. Oop, wrong way. The only exception to UL 325 is a fire door, designed to come down in the event of a fire. It's going to come down quickly. It's not going to stop. There's nothing that's going to get in its way. There is going to be some other form of egress back here. And if I'm running out of there, I don't have to be the fastest guy or woman, right? Just got to be faster than the person behind me. So UL is envious of the design work that you all do here. So they designed a warning placard. There you go. You can pass that around. So the warning placard should be installed near the door, but not on the door. If you have one door, you're going to have one warning placard. If you have 8 doors, each door operator is going to come with a warning placard. You're going to have 8 warning placards, one to each side. Because if I have 8 doors and I only put it at the left end and I'm standing at the right, I'm not going to see it. It's going to be made from rigid material, which you're going to see coming around. You're going to have a black border with 3 panels. The top is the single word panel, warning with the warning alert symbol, pictorial panel in the middle, and then the bottom is the message panel. You're going to have the risk and consequence statement. The risk is moving door. Consequence can cause serious injury or death. So it's important that you specify UL 325 product. It really could become a liability issue. I kind of went at the 30,000 foot level because I could really dive into that for an hour or more. But you don't want something to come back to you years after the operator was installed. Protect yourself when you're writing your specification. Manufacturers are subject to periodic inspections, and ultimately it's the responsibility of the local authority having jurisdiction to enforce that. UL 325 is now part of the IBC. I just had somebody, when I did this 2 weeks ago in Indianapolis, they said, well, where's it at in the IBC? So I had to go find it, and I emailed it to them because they had a fire chief that didn't believe it was part of the IBC. So we sent it to them, and they took care of whatever concerns that he had. This concludes the AIA portion of the presentation, and we're at about 50 minutes. Any questions on anything I reviewed up to this point at all? Yes. The operator is communicating with the protection device at the lower level. The upper one is not monitored at all. That's going to detect something at a higher level, so then it will reverse it, but it doesn't have to be communicating 24 hours a day. It's only communicating when it's opening and closed activated, yes. Only when it's activated. Any other questions? Yes.
On the fire door, do you have to put in a fire department release switch or anything like that after it's closed?
That's going to depend on the local building requirement. Yeah, so you'll have to check with whatever community you're working in. Any other questions? Okay, a couple of slides on who LiftMaster is. LiftMaster is part of the Chamberlain Group. Our headquarters is 25 minutes from here in Oak Brook, Illinois. That building is not quite 4 years old. When we moved in a few years ago, there was a little over 500 employees there. There's almost 850 now, I believe is the last number I heard. We have over 5,000 employees around the world. We are the world's largest manufacturer of commercial and residential door operators, gate operators, and access control products. Chamberlain Group, you might be familiar with the name because it's advertised on TV. Product is sold to the do-it-yourself market through Home Depot, Lowe's, and Menards, companies like that. I work for LiftMaster, which is a division of Chamberlain Group. LiftMaster is distributed through pro-authorized dealers and distributors, not only around the country, but around the world. 2 sister companies, CPSG, Access Control Products. Did you get involved? I don't think so from looking at your website with dock levelers at all? Very little? Okay. So we have a sister company, Systems Inc., based out of Milwaukee suburb, and they manufacture dock levelers. I did this presentation in Virginia in the fall, and the Corps of Engineers has 2 projects going up in Europe. Yesterday, actually this morning, excuse me, yesterday I sent the first email, but this morning I talked to somebody from Motorlift, which is another sister company based in Germany, and they distribute our operators and dock levelers. So I put them in touch with the architectural firm doing work in Germany. Grifco is another sister company based in Australia. MyQ, is anybody in the room familiar with MyQ at all? One person out of 20 something. Marketing is doing horrible. You are too? 2 out of 20 something. There you go. There you go. So I'm going to show that a little towards the end of the presentation. LiftMaster got our start on the residential market, chain drive, belt drive, jackshaft operators. Another pop quiz. Why would you put a jackshaft operator, if you remember what that is, in a single family home's garage? Anybody? There you go. So guess what? You get the same price. Rice Krispie treat. There you go. My sister has a jackshaft operator in her garage in Villa Park because she has shelving over her cars where she puts her Christmas tree and Christmas decorations for 10 months out of the year. I have a buddy that lives in St. Charles, and he tricked out his garage. He's got that epoxy on the floor. He's got a big screen bigger than what you've got here. He's got a heater in there. He's got everything except for running water in his garage. He didn't want those rails coming back inside. Okay. And actually, I put a picture, not of his garage, but of something like that on my Instagram. If anybody's on Instagram, you can check it out there. We also manufacture gate operators. I know you said you don't do much. Real quickly, we do have solar-powered options, though. If you had a project and for whatever reason you couldn't get electricity out here, we have a solar-powered option that you could utilize. Access control products for single and multiple tenants for both door and gate systems. Everything integrates with our operators. CapXL, we introduced this about 3 years ago almost now. CapXL is internet-based or cloud-based, 24/7 uptime. If you have turnover in a custodial staff at a school, you don't want to have to go out there every time and reprogram it. They can do it from their tablet or their laptop or inside the facility. It allows up to, I think it's 2,000 different people. I see you keep looking at your watch. I'll get you out of here in a minute. Oh, okay, okay. We also manufacture dock levelers. Give me a call and I can help you out with that. I know you don't do much, you just said. We manufacture everything that we talked about as UL 325 compliant. We have purpose configured project applications. I know you don't get involved with most of these, so I'm not going to spend time on those. A couple of key features and then we're done. Security Plus 2.0. With every click of a remote, the code is burned. So nobody can sit outside that school, try to steal that code, and then enter maybe on the weekend when nobody's there. It's going to be burned every single time, and it's also sent over a tri-band frequency. What were the frequencies? 310, 315, and 390. I almost forgot them. That way, if the police are using one of them, you don't have to press it 3 times. You just press it once, it's used, and then it's burned. Dual voltage. Excuse me, U-Spec 115. The contractor orders 115. It's Friday at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock. He's looking forward to the weekend. He's booked on Monday, and somehow he got 2:30 at the project. So he either has to wait for somebody to pick up one and bring it there on Friday, and he's going to have to work later, or he's got to come back next week, but he's already scheduled maybe for 2 weeks. He's going to be upset. All of our product comes with dual voltage, so all he does is he takes the plug, figures out which one that he needs, and he plugs it into the right spot. So you look like a hero, and he doesn't even know it. You saved him time. We all know time is money. You need to make sure you let him know that when that comes up in the conversation. MyQ technology. 2 people in the room have it. I'm going to give you a couple things you might not know about, hopefully. And if you do, you do. MyQ is a free app, and this is tied into our office in Oak Brook. I also have it on my home. And since you know about it, I'm not going to come to you. Oh, somebody just used it because it said closed for 7 days. How long does that say it's closed for? Can you see? 9 minutes. So in Oak Brook, I've done this presentation from Virginia and from New York. It's a free app. It allows a property manager, owner, or homeowner, 2 people, to control your access to your garage. We've all heard of a little company. I bet 20-some people here, probably at least 20 of you have ordered from Amazon. We partnered with them last year at the Consumer Electronics Show. We've had about 1 million deliveries to in-home garage since June, because that's when it went live. So what it does is you order from Amazon and you click deliver to garage. You get a delivery window. I believe it's a 2-hour window. The driver gets to your neighborhood, you get a pop-up that says the driver's in your neighborhood. When he gets to your home, this door has been closed for 9 minutes. Tap on it. It takes about 20 seconds for the commercial one to open. I'm not sure on the single family home. That's going to tell you in a moment, it's going to go live and tell you that the door is open. The driver goes into your garage, and what happens is that tells you opening now. And it's 8 seconds, 9 seconds, 10 seconds. He goes in your garage, puts a box there. If you're a frequent customer of Amazon, there's your pop-up. So you get a pop-up that tells you that he was in your garage, that the door opened. He goes in your garage. If you're a frequent customer from Amazon, what we've heard is a lot of people will put either a box or a mat that says Amazon. The driver puts the package there. He goes back out, and then now I'm closing that same door. And it tells you that it's closing for 1 second, 8 seconds. I just actually opened the Oak Brook door, yes. Somebody opened it 9 minutes ago. So my counterpart, who's somewhere in the West, because he covers West, he probably did it at his presentation. Because when I checked it before I got here, or when I got here, it said it was closed for 7 days. Because I didn't have a presentation last week. I thought that he did, but maybe his last one was on Wednesday. I'm not sure. So then the driver gets back to his vehicle. He taps that and closes the door, and then you're going to get another pop-up. Parents love it because they know when Junior comes home from school, or if Junior's not supposed to leave the house. They know when the door opened and he went outside to play with his buddies and he's not supposed to. Commercial property owners, schools, they all love it because you can tell how frequently the door is open and closed. It'll also tell you when maintenance might be required. We had a customer in Florida that one of the Quick Loop facilities, I don't remember what brand, and it doesn't matter, but on a Saturday, did you sign in? You did, right? Okay, you're welcome. Thank you. On a Saturday, he wasn't at the business, and the door opened like 25 times, open, close. So he was pretty excited. Oh, we're going to have a great day. We had a lot of money coming in. He went there the next day, and something was off. The cash didn't match. What he found out was that his employee doing the oil change, or I should say former employee, gave away like 15 of them because there was only cash for 10 oil changes. Family and friends were coming, and he was doing them for free. Cold storage facilities, you want to be able to tell if that door, and I don't believe you work on them, but you want to make sure that that door is closed all the way, because if it's open even 2 inches, you're losing a lot of that money going out through underneath. So a lot of different applications, but it allows a commercial property owner or manager to manage their facility. And I can talk to you afterwards a little more. We're almost done. A couple of slides left. That just showed the pop-up. NEMA 1 Photo Eyes, NEMA 4, NEMA 4X. I've worked with a couple of architects. I remember Indianapolis and Columbus, Ohio, that they spec'd NEMA 4 Photo Eyes in a fire station. And what happened was in the wash bay, when the trucks were getting washed, they were knocking them out of alignment. So we shipped them a NEMA 4X photo eye as a flexible housing. So when it gets knocked out of alignment, it bounces back. Now, if you stand there with a sledgehammer, yes, of course it's going to go out of alignment. A lot of people will ask me, Sam, can I put this in my garage? My kids knock them out of alignment all the time. Not available on residential. I don't know why. I would think it makes sense to do it there, but only on commercial. This is the non-monitored auxiliary photo eye. This is a light curtain. These are cut down. They're usually 3 foot, but I cut them down to put in my bag when I travel. This gets mounted in the door jamb, so you put your photo eye at 6 inches. Instead of putting, you asked me about that second photo eye, instead of putting a second photo eye, this is 3 foot, you can put the bottom at 2 foot, and it'll go up to 5 or wherever you want it. You do need to be a ninja to get through that, though. So you got to be careful about that. Almost done. Couple slides left. Our door edge system is 33 feet. And we have photo eyes in ours, so you don't have to be worried about cutting it. Remember I said if the contractor cuts it and doesn't check it, you got 2 or 4 wires, it could be a liability problem. With ours, he pops the photo eye out, cuts to whatever length he needs, put the photo eye back, and there's no challenge or problem. That just shows what happens if it hits an obstruction. Open only push button. Do you use these at all on projects? Not really? No? Push it once, the door opens, you can hit it 99 more times like you do an elevator button, nothing's going to happen. Door position indicator, it's going to flash red, telling the driver not to leave. Solid green tells him that he can now leave. 3-button station, this will have an indicator light for when it's time for maintenance. Timer to close, we think it's going to go away with the acceptance of MyQ. Last pop quiz, we've worked on the Pentagon, Cowboy Stadium down in Texas, Yankee Stadium up in New York. The Golden Gate Bridge has operators. Why? They have maintenance bays down on the bottom. How long does it take to paint the Golden Gate Bridge? Anybody? You're both right, and I have 2 left, so you got one. It is a year, and then they... Who else wants it? Here, I'll throw it to the back row. Good catch. It takes a year to paint the Golden Gate Bridge. They turn around and they go all the way back, and then they start over again. So you want to talk about job security, right? Everything that we have is on LiftMaster.com. There's a sub-tab for architects, and then there's another sub-tab that says product specifier. So I walk maybe half a dozen architects a week through this. They call me and they say, Sam, what operator do I need? So you click on the specifier. It'll ask those 4 questions, but a few more. And it'll walk you through, and then it'll give you 1 or 2 recommendations based on the info you give them. Everything that we have is on caddetails.com. I have 4 other presentations. If you don't want me to come back, they're all accredited. You can go online and do them online on AEC Daily. I do have our architectural binder with our 3-part spec. Who would get that? Is there a spec writer in the room, Dan? Right there. If I can get your card afterwards, just so I know who I gave it to. That has everything. It's all on the website as well, but that's kind of nice and easy. It's got the 3-part binder. It's got the spec on it. That is everything, and I got you out of here in 50 minutes. I do have a short survey. This is how I get graded from the bosses, so how many get turned in. So I'd appreciate it if you can do the survey. I don't know how many I have enough, but I don't know if I'm passing them out correctly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. I think that's 5. I think I need to get a couple more for this side of the room. There's 1 there. Thank you, everybody. I'll hang around for questions afterwards. Or I'll take the extras because I think they need some on that side. Thank you. Any feedback, positive or otherwise, is appreciated. If I went too fast, if I skipped on something, if I didn't have an answer for you. Great, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Have a great afternoon. You're welcome. And I get to get home without flying.